Frank Yu, Lyft. Give it up. Woohoo!
Hey, everybody. Wow. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Frank Yu, and I'm the mobile product lead at Lyft. And it's a really big honor to be here, sharing the stage with a lot of people in the design world that I look up to. So thanks for having me and sticking around. So did anybody else here ride by Lyft besides myself? Yes. Yes. Awesome. Okay, for the rest of you, I have $20 Lyft credits, so come find me afterwards. I got like 23 of them, so it's a limited supply. So what exactly is Lyft? What Lyft is it's a peer-to-peer transportation community. There's drivers and passengers, and they're comprised of people just like you and me. We're operating in 18 cities and expanding. And in fact, I believe we're launching Columbus, Ohio today. So if there's any Ohio State Buckeye fans out there, we're coming your way. And we recently surpassed the 1 million rides completed mark. This happened just in August, and we're continuing to grow. So definitely some exciting times ahead. So today I'm going to talk about some of the things that we encountered in building a peer-to-peer marketplace in year one, in city one, being San Francisco. And then I'll dive a little bit deeper into a couple of the design challenges we faced along the way. But before we dive in, I wanted to share with you a story. This is Stacy. Stacy is a Lyft driver here in San Francisco, and she's been with us since June of 2013 of this year. And these are Stacy's shoes. And her story is about a ride she had back just a few months ago in August with a passenger here in the city. And I'm going to read this from Stacy's own words because I just would not be able to do it justice on my own. So tonight was a first, and I have a tale to tell. I had a passenger who seemed like she was having a rough time. I asked her what her favorite part of 2013 was, and she was really struggling to think of anything. I asked if she had any major life events, and she said no, not any good ones. Still, we managed to keep the conversation upbeat. We were on our way to her home so she could pick up some shoes, then off to the Caltrain so she could get to her work. She works as a nurse at Stanford, the 7 to 7 graveyard shift, and only had a pair of sandals with her, so she had to get home to grab some sneakers. But we hit a lot of traffic. It got to the point where we were pretty certain she was going to miss her train, and I asked if maybe she could skip going home, but she said she could not. You can't work in sandals as a nurse. And she said maybe there was one more train she could catch and not be late for work, but she'd still have to get a cab in Palo Alto to finish the trip. So as we were pulling up to her house, she opened her purse, and a look of horror appeared on her face. She said, "My house keys are in Berkeley," and it immediately began to break down, like someone who just could not catch a break. And I think she started crying. So we pulled over so she could gather her thoughts, and I asked if she had time maybe to buy some shoes somewhere, before going into work, and she said no, and kept emphasizing how bad it would be for her to show up late for work. And then I remembered something. I had shoes in my trunk. I said, okay, this might be weird, but I have shoes. They're kind of like knockoff Toms, so they're the kind of shoes I wear without socks, but I promise I don't have a weird foot fungus or anything. So if it would help, you could totally have my shoes. Moments later, she was in my shoes at Caltrain, giving me a huge hug, thanking me over and over again, and then she was off to her 12-hour shift. I definitely never thought giving a passenger my shoes would be something I'd experience, but I'm so glad I could help make her day just a little bit easier. And now I have an interesting story to tell. So that's pretty cool, right? And why do I tell this story? it gets at this experience, beyond the app, beyond the algorithms and all the technology. It gets really at the core of what we're really after at Lyft. And it's this idea of community. So how does this relate to marketplace dynamics and supply and demand and reaching critical mass? So let's dig in. When you're creating a peer-to-peer marketplace, you often hear of this conundrum, this chicken or the egg conundrum. And the basic premise is, if you have a marketplace with people who are looking to buy things, but this marketplace doesn't have sellers that have things or enough inventory of things, then the people who want things, they'll go away and your marketplace is hosed. And that's evidenced here by this sad lady walking by empty shelves with no inventory. Similarly, if you have a marketplace and you have sellers who have things, but you don't have customers that actually want those things, then the seller is going to go away, and again, your marketplace is hosed. And Lyft is subject to the very same marketplace dynamics as what's described here. So what do? We went with chicken. We put our money on chicken. And chicken, metaphorically speaking, is supply, in our case, drivers. And there are many ways you could acquire chicken. You could buy chicken. You could rent chicken. You could borrow chicken. You could manufacture robotic chickens. And some people will even steal chickens. But we decided that we would acquire chickens, and we got it from a familiar source. So as a company, we've been peer-to-peer transportation from day one. It's in our DNA. And if you're not familiar with this, Zimride was both a parent company to Lyft, as well as a precursor product to Lyft. And for those not familiar with Zimride, what it is the difference in use case is that it's for longer distance rides scheduled a little bit farther in advance. And the other thing about Zimride is we already had a pre-vetted community of amazing drivers. And these drivers are not only amazing people, they're also natural pioneers. And were more than willing to go on this little experiment with us that we were calling Lyft. So conundrum solved. We knew we were going with supply. We were leading with chicken. It came time to start developing this system, this environment where we were bringing these two sides of the marketplace and converging in one place. So we do 2 dedicated apps, one for each side, passenger and driver. And this comes with pros and cons. On the pros side, you get to, there's fewer dependencies between the two. You could really isolate issues. You can keep your code bases lean on each side. And more importantly, you could really dig down and optimize each experience for each user type. Take, for example, Airbnb. And I know they've caught a little heat recently, but for me, it doesn't change the fact that they are a stellar company, and they are the trailblazer when it comes to the peer-to-peer sharing space. And if you talk to anybody from Airbnb, you'll often hear that some of their best hosts start off as being great guests. And so, why do you think that is? If you've ever experienced a service like Airbnb or Lyft, you've been able to see that social value or that community impact firsthand. And it's meaningful. So in light of that, we decided, let's do one app. A single app, 2 modes, passenger and driver. And how you'll switch between these 2 modes is with this little toggle switch that you can access from the menu. Now that we decided to do one app with 2 modes, we didn't want to forget about that point about optimizing the experience for each use case and each user type. So what you see evidenced here is this, on the left, this driver app. It's what we like to call arm's length UX. So what that means is oversized buttons, sliders in some cases in place of buttons to prevent accidental interaction, and sounds. Sounds that let you know that there's state changes so you can keep your focus on the road. On the passenger side, our goal there was spare, simple UI, indicators of trust, large photos, and then carefully placed delight features. So on the right, for those of you in the know, if you tip your driver enough of a percentage over the base amount, you get rewarded in a lightweight way with fireworks and a happy balloon. And what it's really communicating is like, here's this person that's providing a service for you, and you're turning it around and hooking them up with a few extra dollars, then you should be rewarded for that. But for the most part, we want to stay out of your way. So we had our initial founding drivers acquired from Zimride. So now it was time to start drumming up some demand. So we got the word out to our friends and family, and then the word started spreading like super fast. And friends told their friends, and their friends told their friends, and before you knew it, there was this wave, this giant wave of like demand like descending upon us. We were like, holy crap. This is a great problem to have, but how do we get to some semblance of equilibrium, this idea of like liquidity? We thought in the beginning, we seeded the system with supply. Then here comes the demand. How do we bring back up the supply or do something about the demand? So it became evident that availability was going to actually become our most important feature. So we batted around a few different ideas, some worse than others. But our first attempt was this idea of throttling back demand. So this is a waitlist feature. So we were actively preventing new users from signing up and using the service, which sounds ludicrous. Why would you do that? Why would you actually prevent yourself from growing? But the truth is, it wasn't as bad as you thought it would be. In fact, it kept power users happy because we were, in a sense, reserving some of the supply for them. And these are some of our best users because they're actively using it over and over again. And at the same time, newbies weren't so pissed because, in effect, they didn't really know what they were missing. They hadn't had a chance to try it yet. So that this addictive nature of Lyft, it hadn't hit for them yet. And in fact, they were kind of excited at the anticipation of someday getting in and getting access to this great new service that they heard about. Moreover, it bought us a little time. It bought us a little time to sort of figure out, okay, how are we going to bring this marketplace back into some sense of equilibrium and not get hammered by this unmet demand. And another thing, that we latched onto this experiment, was this Become a Driver promo. So how it worked was if you actually followed through and signed up for the wait list, we actually then said, yes, you can't get in just quite yet, but what you can do is sign up to become a driver. And if you're approved, you get to jump the line and you could use the service straight away as a passenger. So what we're attacking the problem from both sides now, from a supply side and from a demand side. And it was an experiment, but what was important about it, it got us thinking about solving the supply problem from a different perspective. So there's this idea of community-powered supply, meaning why not look at the demand side and convert some of them into supply. And so in the beginning, that driver toggle mode switch that you saw earlier, that wasn't visible to all users. It was only visible to approved drivers. So if you were not approved to drive, what you saw instead in its place was this call to action to become a driver. And you'd tap it, it would take you to a web view, you'd have to fill out this form, you'd submit it. And we got some leads from it, but at the end of the day, it didn't convert super well. But again, it got us thinking, like, we could blur these lines a bit. Like, why shouldn't we make good on this idea of bridging the gap of the two sides of this marketplace, bringing people, making it easier for you to traverse this line? In fact, we started thinking about passengers as they're just drivers, and they don't know it yet. They're just non-approved drivers. So why treat the UI any differently? And so brainstorming this, we came up with like the simplest of solutions. The first being, instead of hiding the mode switcher from non-approved drivers, let's just make it available to everybody. And those curiosity seekers, they might flip into it. And if you're not approved, it's just going to dump you at the top of the funnel, and you might fall through and actually apply to be a driver. The second thing was the simplest, the mother of all simplest solutions is a button. So we put a button, a discoverable entry point right there on the home screen, up in the nav bar. So what happened? What you're seeing here is driver leads that were generated through the app. So through these three entry points that I pointed out. So that become a driver call to action in the earlier days, the mode switcher, and this button. And so what we saw is slow, steady, moderate to flat growth up into the spring. And then all of a sudden you hit April and hockey stick. It's my hockey reference. So that's 8x week over week growth. We were like shocked, happy, but super surprised. Like what this told us, it's not always about like fancy, sophisticated funnels that necessarily will convert well. Sometimes it's just a button. And it ties back to this idea, like thinking back to the Airbnb example, this idea that you could traverse this line between supply and demand. Sometimes I could drive, sometimes I could be a passenger. It's not that much of a stretch to imagine if you've had a really great experience on using one of these services that you can see yourself on the other side. Like, I could host somebody that's into mid-century modern furniture as much as I am, or maybe I can imagine giving up my shoes for a passenger that needs them. So you can see it's a very powerful concept, and you do it not because you don't do it for the money. It's not about the transaction, but you do it because it makes your city feel smaller, and you do it because it gets you to know your neighbors. So continuing along on this theme, let's take a look at some driver metrics. So 27% of our drivers, they just drive, period. And that's okay, that's allowed. But 36% of our drivers were actually passengers first before they were drivers. And filling this out, 3/4 of our drivers, they use the service as a passenger as well. So you could see like this idea of blurring these lines, bringing the two sides of the marketplace together, not thinking of these two sides as service provider and service consumer, and just thinking of it as one user, one community, two modes. It's a powerful thing. It has an impact on product and people alike. So the bottom line is Lyft exists because it's people-focused. It's in our DNA. And without a doubt, when you're building a peer-to-peer marketplace, you have to get to critical mass. I mean, you can't survive without getting there. However, if you want your service to be more than a transactional platform, then you'll pay attention to the people like Stacy, who will elevate your service and actually inform your roadmap, affect growth, affect retention, and they'll spread some goodwill along the way. So I just want to end with a quick video. It's a video of a community event we held in Los Angeles. I think it nicely captures this spirit of Lyft and peer-to-peer marketplaces and community, and it kind of brings the whole story full circle. And if we get audio, thanks.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a Lyft driver.
I am Susie May.
and I am an avid Lyft passenger.
Hi, my name is Eric, and I am a Lyft passenger.
Hi, I'm Jason, and I'm a Lyft driver.
My name is Esprit, and I'm a Lyft passenger.
My name is Tony, I'm a Lyft passenger.
Hi, I'm Allie, and I'm a Lyft passenger.
I'm Dylan, and I'm a Lyft driver and Lyft passenger.
We're in Los Angeles at the first ever Lyft community event, and we had an amazing turnout, over 100 people sharing why Lyft matters to them and why Lyft needs to stay in LA.
We're here tonight in Los Angeles at the first ever Lyft community meeting. And this is the first time that drivers and passengers are coming together because Lyft really is all about community.
Lyft's trying to build a more affordable, social, sustainable transportation system. It's trying to make cities feel smaller and more connected.
What absolutely blows my mind is the connectivity. The drivers and the passengers just getting together, the executives, everyone is just all about like showing the Los Angeles community love.
It's the people. That's really what drives me to do it, is to meet the people I haven't had a chance to meet in my own community, in my own backyard.
When I get into a Lyft car, I feel like I made a new friend.
I use Lyft because it is safe and secure.
It's convenient, it's cost-effective.
I feel extraordinarily safe.
This is something really special.
It's made the city seem a lot less scary.
I came here tonight because this is something I feel is important for Los Angeles.
We're doing a good thing here, and I'm glad I can be a part of it.
I'm actually very grateful and appreciative of being able to rediscover the essence of LA and to see just how diverse and kind of unique and beautiful this community is. So Lyft love forever, and
So that's my time. One more thing, we're hiring designers, engineers, PMs, data scientists. So if you would like to rock the stash, you want to represent and join the family, please come find me. Thanks, WarmGun.